Introduction. Welcome to 100 Mind-Blowing Extreme Sports Facts, a collection built to make you say, they actually did what? From gravity-defying stunts to near-impossible endurance feats, this audiobook dives headfirst into the wildest, most adrenaline-fueled moments ever caught on camera or barely survived. Have you ever heard of someone jumping out of a plane without a parachute or riding a bike across a crane high above the city? How about climbing a skyscraper with suction cups or skiing down an erupting volcano? These aren't scenes from an action movie. They really happened, and you're about to hear them all. Each fact has been chosen to shock, amaze, and maybe even inspire a little awe. Whether you're a thrill seeker, a curious listener, or just someone who loves a good, you won't believe this story, there's something here for you. Listen from start to finish or jump to any chapter. Either way, you're in for a wild ride. So strap in, hold tight, and get ready to explore the bold, bizarre, and downright mind-blowing world of extreme sports. Just remember, don't try any of this at home. Let's dive in. The skydiver who broke the sound barrier. Felix Baumgartner jumped from space and lived to tell the tale. In 2012, the Austrian daredevil ascended to the stratosphere in a helium balloon and then jumped from an altitude of 128,100 feet, roughly 24 miles above Earth. During free fall, he reached speeds of 843.6 miles per hour, becoming the first human to break the sound barrier without a vehicle. He plummeted for 4 minutes and 20 seconds before deploying his parachute, landing safely in the New Mexico desert. The stunt wasn't just extreme, it was history-making, pushing the boundaries of what the human body can endure at the edge of space. The cyclist who rode off a cliff. In 2013, Canadian mountain biker Kelly McGarry pulled off one of the most jaw-dropping feats in extreme sports history, a backflip over a 72-foot canyon during the Red Bull Rampage in Utah. What made it even more insane? The narrow dirt path, deadly drop-offs, and the fact that one wrong move meant certain disaster. With a GoPro strapped to his helmet, McGarry launched himself off a cliff, rotated backward in midair, and stuck the landing like it was no big deal, earning him global fame and one of the most watched mountain biking videos of all time. Surfing a 101-foot monster. In 2013, Brazilian surfer Carlos Burla rode what is believed to be a 101-foot wave off the coast of Nazaré, Portugal, one of the most dangerous and unpredictable big wave spots on Earth. Facing a wall of water taller than a 10-story building, Burl carved across the wave's face with unbelievable control and courage. What made the moment even more dramatic? Just minutes earlier, he had rescued fellow surfer Maya Gabeira, who nearly drowned attempting a similar wave. Burley's ride wasn't just about records, it was about survival, timing, and pure guts in the face of nature's fury. The skater who jumped the Great Wall. In 2005, skateboarding legend Danny Way did the unthinkable. He jumped over China's Great Wall on a skateboard without even using a ramp to land. Launching himself down a massive roll-in tower, Way hit speeds of over 50 miles per hour before soaring across the ancient structure. Not only did he make the jump successfully, but he did it 5 times, despite breaking his foot during warm-ups. The stunt blended ancient history with modern daredevilry, cementing Way's legacy as one of the most fearless skaters of all time. The marathon swimmer who beat the ocean. In 2013, endurance swimmer Diana Niad became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without a shark cage at the age of 64. She swam 110 miles through jellyfish-infested, shark-populated waters for nearly 53 hours straight. After 4 failed attempts over 3 decades, Niad finally conquered the treacherous Florida Straits on her 5th try, fueled by sheer willpower and a mantra: find a way. It wasn't just a swim, it was a battle against the limits of the human body, and a triumph 30 years in the making. Climbing without a rope or fear. In 2017, climber Alex Honnold stunned the world by free soloing El Capitan, a 3,000-foot vertical rock face in Yosemite National Park with no rope, no harness, and no room for error. For nearly 4 hours, Honnold scaled sheer granite using only his hands, feet, and absolute mental focus. One slip would have meant instant death. His climb was later featured in the Oscar-winning documentary Free Solo, capturing what many consider the most dangerous athletic feat ever recorded. It wasn't just climbing, it was redefining what's humanly possible on a wall. Snowboarder survives an avalanche ride. In 2011, professional snowboarder Xavier Delarue was filming in the Alps when he triggered a massive avalanche and was buried alive while wearing a helmet cam. The footage shows Delarue getting swept down the mountain like a rag doll, completely engulfed in snow. Miraculously, his avalanche airbag deployed, and he was able to dig himself out, uninjured. Even after being pummeled by nature's fury, he kept riding. His survival wasn't just luck, it was a masterclass in preparation, calm under pressure, and experience in high-stakes terrain. The wingsuit flight through a cave. In 2011, Finnish wingsuit pilot Jukka Sommer pulled off a stunt that looked straight out of a video game. He flew through a narrow mountain cave at over 100 miles per hour. Wearing a wingsuit that turned his body into a human glider, Sommer launched from a cliff in the Alps and threaded the needle through a rock arch barely wider than his wingspan. One miscalculation would have meant instant impact, but he soared cleanly through, capturing the flight on a helmet cam that later went viral. It wasn't just flight, it was precision, speed, and bravery in perfect sync. The ultra runner who ran 350 miles nonstop. In 2005, ultra-endurance athlete Dean Karnazes ran 350 miles without sleeping, in one continuous run. Starting in San Francisco and ending well into California's Central Valley, Karnazes pushed through 3 straight days and nights, battling hallucinations, blisters, and brutal fatigue. No rest, no naps, just pure forward motion, fueled by energy gels, protein shakes, and the occasional slice of pizza mid-run. He shattered expectations of human endurance. When asked why he did it, his answer was simple: because I can. The skier who fell 1,000 feet and lived. In 2006, extreme skier Jamie Pierre was filming in the backcountry of Wyoming when he accidentally triggered an avalanche and fell over 1,000 feet down a steep mountain face. Tossed like a rag doll through rocks and snow, Pierre miraculously survived with barely a scratch, even though he wasn't wearing a helmet. The fall was caught on camera and stunned the skiing world. He later brushed it off, saying, "It was a wild ride. For most people, it would have been their last. For Pierre, it was just another day in the mountains." Riding waves in a river of lava. In 2016, French daredevil Fred Fugan surfed a wave of molten lava, yes, actual lava, on a modified board during an expedition in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Wearing a special heat-resistant suit and surrounded by a support team, Fugan danced just inches from flowing magma in one of the planet's most hostile environments. The stunt was part lava surfing, part stunt science, and all completely insane. It blurred the line between sport and survival, and no one's tried to top it since. Skydiving without a parachute. In 2016, stuntman Luke Akins jumped out of a plane at 25,000 feet without a parachute and lived to tell the tale. Wearing only a wingsuit, Akins plummeted toward Earth at terminal velocity and landed in a giant net barely the size of a baseball diamond. The net was suspended 20 stories high to cushion his fall, and there was zero room for error. It was the first ever successful skydive without a chute, and it pushed the very concept of free fall to its absolute extreme. Motorcycling across a tightrope. In 2010, French stuntman Julien Dupont took motocross to new heights literally by riding his dirt bike across a tightrope suspended high above the ground in Lyon, France. Balancing on a steel cable just inches wide, Dupont carefully throttled forward with dizzying drops on either side. With no safety net below, a single wobble could have spelled disaster, yet he maintained perfect control, completing the stunt with style and a few tricks for good measure. It wasn't just balance, it was high-wire insanity on two wheels. The cliff diver who jumps from 90 feet. Professional cliff diver Orlando Duke has leapt from heights of up to 90 feet, nearly 9 stories tall, into just 16 feet of water. With perfect form and zero fear, Duke dives from cliffs, bridges, and platforms worldwide, twisting through the air at speeds over 50 miles per hour before slicing into the water like a knife. One mistake could mean serious injury or worse, but his consistency and grace have made him a legend in the sport. It's not just diving, it's controlled free fall from the sky. The man who skied down Everest. In 2000, Slovenian adventurer Davo Karnikar became the first person to ski down Mount Everest from summit to base without taking off his skis. Starting at 29,035 feet, Karnikar navigated sheer ice, deadly crevasses, and razor-thin ridges, all while descending the world's tallest mountain. The entire run took just over 4 hours, but it was the result of years of training and surgical precision. Most climbers struggle just to survive Everest. Karnikar turned it into a high-speed downhill course. Kayaking off a 189-foot waterfall. In 2009, Brazilian kayaker Pedro Oliva paddled off the edge of Salto Belo, a thunderous waterfall in Brazil measuring 189 feet tall, taller than Niagara Falls. Launching over the brink in his kayak, Oliva dropped like a missile into the raging pool below. He surfaced seconds later, miraculously unharmed, and casually raised his paddle in triumph. It shattered the world record for the highest waterfall descent by kayak and redefined what's survivable in whitewater. Ice climbing a 300-foot frozen waterfall. Extreme climber Will Gadd made history in 2015 by ascending a 300-foot frozen waterfall inside the Grand Canyon. Using ice axes and crampons, Gadd scaled the towering vertical wall of ice formed by a rare freeze along a cliffside spring. The ice was fragile, unpredictable, and melting fast, making every swing and step a high-stakes gamble. The climb was so risky it had never been attempted before and may never be repeated. It was a fleeting moment of icy perfection, captured in one breathtaking ascent. The rollerblader who jumped between roofs. In the early 2000s, French inline skater Tague Chris stunned the world by leaping between two six-story buildings on rollerblades. The death-defying gap set up in downtown Paris left no margin for error. Chris hit top speed down a ramp, launched across open air, and landed cleanly on the opposite rooftop. But he didn't stop there. He later set a world record by launching off the Eiffel Tower's first platform, landing on a massive ramp below. This wasn't street skating, it was urban flight. Scaling skyscrapers without ropes. French climber Alain Robert, nicknamed the French Spider-Man, has scaled over 100 skyscrapers without any ropes or safety gear. He's climbed landmarks like the Burj Khalifa, the Eiffel Tower, and New York's Empire State Building using only his hands, feet, and sheer nerve. Often arrested at the top, Robert views each ascent as a personal and philosophical challenge, not just a stunt. One slip would mean a fatal fall, but that's exactly what makes him climb. The man who ran a marathon in Antarctica. In 2002, Irish endurance athlete Richard Donovan became the first person to run a marathon at the South Pole, braving minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures and bone-chilling winds. Wearing multiple layers and battling frostbite risks with every step, Donovan completed the 26.2-mile course on snow and ice, where even breathing felt like inhaling razors. He later went on to run marathons on all 7 continents in just 7 days, but it all started in the coldest place on Earth. When most people bundle up, he ran. The BMX backflip over the Thames. In 2005, UK BMX legend Kai Fort launched off a custom ramp and backflipped his bike over the River Thames in London, clearing over 60 feet of open water. With only a split second of airtime and a narrow landing ramp waiting on the other side, the margin for error was razor thin. One miscalculation and he would have ended up in the river, or worse. Fort stuck the landing, adding his name to the list of riders who turned urban landscapes into jaw-dropping stunt arenas. The cliff jumper who set a world record. In 2015, Colombian daredevil Orlando Duque jumped from a staggering 89 feet, 27 meters, off a cliff into a narrow inlet in Acapulco, Mexico, setting a world record for the highest cliff dive into shallow water. The landing zone was just 13 feet deep, meaning Duque had to enter the water perfectly vertical to avoid serious injury or death. With crowds watching from boats and balconies, he nailed the dive with flawless form. Precision at that height isn't just skill, it's survival. The base jumper who leapt from Burj Khalifa. In 2014, French skydivers Fred Fugan and Vince Refet set a world record by base jumping from the top of the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building on Earth at 2,722 feet. After climbing a custom extension to the spire's peak, they launched themselves into the Dubai skyline, free-falling before deploying their parachutes just above the city's skyscrapers. The stunt required months of planning, special permissions, and nerves of absolute steel. It wasn't just a leap, it was the highest urban jump in human history. Swimming under a frozen lake. In 2021, Danish freediver Stig Severinsen swam over 250 feet beneath a frozen lake in Greenland on a single breath and without a wetsuit. Wearing only swim trunks and goggles, Severinsen glided under the ice sheet in freezing water, battling both hypothermia and the urge to breathe. The entire swim took more than 2 minutes, and there was no room for error. Surfacing in the wrong spot could mean death. It was part endurance, part meditation, and pure mental mastery beneath the ice. Jumping over a moving Formula One car. In a stunt straight out of an action movie, freerunner Damian Walters backflipped over a speeding Formula One car as it raced directly at him at 60 miles per hour. Timed to absolute perfection, Walters stood with his back to the oncoming car, then launched into a backflip at the exact moment it reached him, soaring over the vehicle with just inches to spare. One mistimed second could have ended it all. It wasn't just parkour, it was human timing pushed to the edge. Running a marathon in the death zone. In 2017, Nepali runner Meera Rai completed a marathon-length trail run above 18,000 feet in the Himalayas, deep in the death zone where oxygen levels are dangerously low. The brutal course wound through snow-covered ridges, glacier fields, and thin air that would leave most people dizzy just standing still. But Rai, a former child soldier turned elite trail runner, powered through with unmatched endurance and grit. It wasn't just a race, it was a test of survival in Earth's most unforgiving altitude. The skater who bombed Lombard Street. In 2013, downhill skateboarder James Kelly tore down San Francisco's famously twisted Lombard Street at breakneck speeds, weaving through hairpin turns without using brakes. Armed with just a helmet and nerves of steel, Kelly leaned into each curve at speeds topping 40 miles per hour, dodging curbs, oncoming traffic, and clueless tourists. The viral video of his run turned him into a legend in the longboarding world. It was part slalom, part survival, and 100% gnarly. Paragliding over an active volcano. In 2007, Spanish paraglider Horatio Lorenz soared directly over the mouth of an erupting volcano in Guatemala while lava bubbled beneath him. Harnessing thermal updrafts from the volcano's heat, Lorenz circled the crater with molten rock glowing below and ash plumes rising all around him. One wrong move or sudden gust, and he could have been pulled straight into the inferno. It wasn't just flight, it was dancing with fire in the sky. The desert cyclist who rode for 7 days. In 2022, ultra cyclist Sofiane Sahili won the Atlas Mountain Race in Morocco, a 745-mile, non-stop race through scorching deserts, rocky climbs, and unmarked trails. Sahili rode almost continuously for 7 days, sleeping just a few hours total. He endured sandstorms, sub-freezing nights, and brutal heat, all without outside support. His secret weapon? Grit, strategy, and eating on the move. It was part expedition, part hallucination, and all-out endurance. Tightrope walking between hot air balloons. In 2020, professional slackliner Rafael Zugnobridi set a jaw-dropping world record by walking a high line between 2 hot air balloons over 6,000 feet in the air. With nothing but a safety harness and perfect balance, Breedy tiptoed across a narrow slack line stretched between the drifting balloons, surrounded by nothing but sky and clouds. The entire scene looked surreal, like something out of a dream. It wasn't just a walk, it was floating on a thread above the earth. The snowboarder who outran an avalanche. In 2016, pro snowboarder Victor Delarue was riding in the French Alps when an avalanche broke loose right behind him. With no time to stop or escape sideways, he charged straight down the mountain, carving at full speed as a wall of snow thundered at his heels. The entire escape was captured on a drone, showing De La Rue barely outpacing the collapsing slope in a heart-stopping chase. It was like surfing a mountain that wanted to bury him, and he won. The free diver who went 702 feet deep. In 2023, Croatian freediver Petar Klovar set a jaw-dropping world record by diving 702 feet deep on a single breath with no fins, tanks, or propulsion. Descending into the ocean's inky blackness, Klovar relied on pure technique and inner calm to withstand the immense pressure and extreme oxygen deprivation. The round trip took over 4 minutes, pushing the absolute edge of human physiology. It wasn't just deep diving, it was a plunge into the limits of life itself. Skiing down an active volcano. In 2010, Swedish skier Andreas Fransson took on one of the most extreme descents ever attempted, skiing down Chile's active volcano, Cerro San Jose, while it spewed ash and steam. The slopes were unpredictable, part snow, part ice, part volcanic rock, and one wrong turn could have led to a fiery plunge or a deadly slide, but Fransson carved his way down with fluid precision, turning chaos into elegance. It wasn't just a ski run, it was dancing on the edge of eruption. The parkour jump over a moving train. In 2018, British freerunner Toby Seagar pulled off a stunt that seemed impossible. He leapt over a moving train mid-run. Timing his approach to the second, Seagar sprinted alongside the tracks and vaulted over the train as it passed beneath him, clearing the top by just a few feet. The move required perfect judgment, explosive speed, and total commitment. One hesitation and it would have ended very differently. Instead, it became an instant parkour legend. The skydiver who flew with a jetpack. In 2015, extreme athlete Yves Rossi, also known as Jetman, launched from a helicopter over Dubai and flew in formation with an airplane, using a custom-built jet-powered wing strapped to his back. With 4 mini jet engines, Rossi soared through the sky at over 120 miles per hour, performing barrel rolls and dives with stunning control. Unlike traditional skydiving, there was no free fall. He was flying like a bird, with real thrust and lift. It wasn't falling with style, it was pure human flight. Riding a bike across a canyon gap. In 2014, mountain biking legend Andrea Lacondegui stunned the world by clearing a 75-foot canyon gap during the Red Bull Rampage in Utah. Launching off a dirt cliff at high speed, Lacondegui soared across the yawning gap with nothing but rock and air beneath him, no safety nets, no second chances. He stuck the landing perfectly, earning one of the highest scores in Rampage history. It wasn't just a jump, it was defying gravity with 2 wheels and total belief. The runner who crossed a continent. In 2013, Australian ultra-runner Richard Bowles ran the entire 3,300-mile length of the Great Himalaya Trail, across 5 countries and some of the world's most punishing terrain. Over 5 months, Bowles endured blizzards, landslides, altitude sickness, and extreme isolation. He averaged a marathon or more every day, sleeping in villages, tents, and sometimes caves. It wasn't just a run, it was an odyssey through the spine of the earth. The highliner who walked above Rio. In 2016, Brazilian slackliner Renan Andrade crossed a highline between 2 cliffs overlooking Rio de Janeiro, suspended hundreds of feet above the city's iconic coastline. With Sugarloaf Mountain and the Atlantic Ocean as his backdrop, Andrade tiptoed across the thin line in gusty wind, barefoot and without fear, pausing midline to strike a yoga pose. The balance, the bravery, the view, it was part art, part adrenaline, and 100% breathtaking. The motocross leap over a football field. In 2008, motocross legend Robbie Madison launched off a massive ramp in Las Vegas and jumped 322 feet through the air, the length of an entire football field plus extra. He flew over the massive gap at nearly 90 miles per hour, landing cleanly on the other side with just inches to spare. The stunt shattered the world record for the longest motorcycle jump and became an instant classic in extreme sports history. It wasn't just distance, it was flight, fueled by throttle and guts. Kayaking through a glacial ice cave. In 2017, American adventurer Eric Boomer kayaked deep inside a melting glacial ice cave in Alaska, navigating narrow, freezing tunnels beneath a massive glacier. The ice above him creaked and cracked, with massive chunks threatening to collapse at any moment. The water was icy, pitch black, and constantly shifting, but Boomer paddled on, exploring a world that few have ever seen, and even fewer have survived. It was part exploration, part escape room, inside a melting giant. Snow kiting across the South Pole. In 2011, Norwegian explorer Christian Adi completed a solo, unsupported trek to the South Pole using only skis and a snow kite. Harnessing Antarctica's fierce winds, Adi glided across icy plains at speeds over 30 miles per hour, covering 700 miles in just 24 days. He carried all his supplies, navigated whiteouts, and battled sub-zero temps completely alone in one of the harshest places on Earth. It wasn't just polar travel, it was extreme survival with style. The barefoot climb of Kilimanjaro. In 2015, South African athlete Khulekani Ngobese scaled Mount Kilimanjaro barefoot, all 19,341 feet of it. Braving razor-sharp rocks, freezing temperatures, and intense altitude shifts, Ngobese made the ascent without boots, socks, or even gloves. His goal wasn't just the summit, it was raising awareness for underprivileged children without proper footwear. He didn't just conquer Africa's tallest peak, he did it with nothing but heart and souls. Climbing a waterfall with no ropes. In 2013, British climber Tim Emmett completed the first ever free solo ice climb of Helmcken Falls in Canada, a 450-foot frozen waterfall with ice formations unlike anywhere else. The ice was fragile, overhanging, and constantly bombarded by spray from the roaring falls behind it, which refroze instantly, turning the climb into a vertical obstacle course of icicles and hanging daggers, and Emmett did it without ropes. It was more than a climb. It was a frozen gauntlet of gravity and grit. The longest underwater bike ride. In 2014, Slovenian athlete Jure Škof set a bizarre but brilliant record by riding a bicycle underwater for over 3,000 feet, nearly 2/3 of a mile beneath the surface of Lake Bled. Wearing scuba gear and pedaling a specially weighted bike along the lake bed, Škof battled poor visibility, uneven terrain, and massive resistance with every turn of the wheels. It was part stunt, part endurance test, and all in on creativity. He didn't just ride, he redefined cycling's depth. The skydive into a volcano crater. In 2015, Russian daredevil Valery Rozov Base jumped into the active Mudnovsky volcano in Kamchatka, Russia, parachuting straight into the crater. He leapt from a helicopter hovering above the steaming abyss, plunging through clouds of sulfur gas before deploying his chute and landing on a narrow patch inside the crater itself. The air was toxic, the winds unpredictable, and the margin for error non-existent. It wasn't just a jump, it was a dive into Earth's fury. The ultra swimmer who crossed 4 channels. In 2017, American endurance swimmer Sarah Thomas became the first person to swim across the English Channel 4 times in a row without stopping. She swam over 130 miles in 54 straight hours through jellyfish stings, rough currents, and saltwater-induced nausea. Even more incredible, she completed the feat just a year after surviving breast cancer. It wasn't just a swim, it was a defiant display of human resilience and raw determination. Skateboarding down a 60-mile-per-hour hill. In 2016, downhill skateboarder Zach Matum bombed a hill in Colorado at a blistering 60 miles per hour, weaving through corners with no guardrails and no room for error. Wearing only a helmet and leather suit, Matum crouched low on his board, maintaining balance and control as the pavement blurred beneath him. Cars couldn't keep up, and even a tiny pebble could have spelled disaster. It wasn't just fast, it was gravity-fueled madness on 4 wheels. Climbing a skyscraper with suction cups. In 2016, engineer and adventurer Cairo Jeschke scaled the 306-foot glass facade of the Frankfurt Tower using homemade vacuum suction cups inspired by Spider-Man. Armed with nothing but his DIY gear and nerves of steel, he clung to the vertical glass, slowly ascending story by story without any safety harness. Every step was a test of pressure, grip, and guts. It wasn't science fiction, it was suction-powered reality. Running a marathon in the Sahara Desert. The Marathon des Sables is widely known as the toughest foot race on Earth, a 156-mile ultra-marathon run across the scorching Sahara Desert in temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit. Athletes carry their own supplies, battle sandstorms, and endure brutal heat over 6 days of relentless terrain, dunes, salt flats, and rocky plains. Dehydration, heat stroke, and exhaustion are constant threats, yet hundreds line up every year. It's not just a race, it's survival disguised as sport. The base jump from an iceberg. In 2013, American wingsuit pilot J.T. Holmes completed the first ever base jump from a floating iceberg off the coast of Baffin Island, Canada. After scaling the towering ice formation, constantly shifting and cracking, Holmes leapt into the Arctic air in his wingsuit, gliding over freezing waters before deploying his parachute. The stunt was so dangerous that he had just minutes to act before the iceberg began to tilt and break apart. It was the ultimate combination of precision, timing, and frozen chaos. The man who paraglided over Everest. In 2011, French adventurer Babu Sunawar and Nepalese pilot Lakpa Cheri Sherpa completed a world first by paragliding from the summit of Mount Everest. After reaching the 29,035-foot peak, they launched into the thin, freezing air with just a paraglider and a dream. They soared for 45 minutes, descending safely into a lower valley, skipping the treacherous 2-day hike down. It wasn't just a descent, it was Everest's most epic exit. Surfing inside a live hurricane. In 2019, pro surfer Zane Schweitzer paddled out to catch waves during a Category 1 hurricane off the coast of Florida, on purpose. With winds topping 90 miles per hour and ocean swells reaching 20 feet, Schweitzer navigated monstrous, churning waves in a storm most would flee from. The ride was violent, unpredictable, and borderline unrideable, but he turned chaos into flow. It wasn't just surfing, it was riding nature's full fury. The longest slackline walk over water. In 2020, German slackliner Friede Kuhne set a world record by walking a 2,800-foot slackline stretched high above a lake in Brazil, the longest water crossing ever on a slackline. Suspended hundreds of feet in the air, with only a 1-inch line beneath him, Kuhne took thousands of careful steps, battling wind, sway, and exhaustion over the course of an hour-long crossing. It wasn't just balance, it was a marathon in the sky. The skier who launched off a cliff blindfolded. In 2014, pro skier J.P. Auclair stunned viewers in a short film where he skied backward, spun 360 degrees, and even launched off a cliff, all while blindfolded. Filmed as part of an artistic project blending creativity and extreme skill, the stunt required total spatial awareness, flawless terrain memory, and next-level confidence. One wrong move meant a fall or far worse. It wasn't just a trick, it was skiing on instinct and style. Running a marathon in a volcano. In 2017, over 100 daring athletes participated in the Volcano Marathon in Chile, racing at over 14,000 feet of elevation inside the Atacama Desert's volcanic field. The course wound through ash, lava rock, and thin air near active volcanoes, with blistering sun and frigid winds trading off throughout the race. Oxygen was scarce, footing was brutal, and every step felt like running on Mars. It wasn't just a marathon, it was lava, lungs, and lunacy. The BMX trick that defied physics. In 2019, Australian BMX rider Ryan Williams landed the world's first triple front flip on a BMX bike, a trick long thought impossible. He launched off a mega ramp, flipped forward 3 full times in the air, and somehow landed cleanly on 2 wheels. The timing, speed, and body control required were mind-boggling, and even seasoned pros called it insane. It wasn't just a trick, it was BMX wizardry in midair. The longest underwater breath hold. In 2021, Croatian freediver Budimir Šobet shattered records by holding his breath underwater for 24 minutes and 37 seconds, the longest static apnea ever recorded. Before the attempt, he hyperventilated with pure oxygen to fully saturate his blood. Even so, the feat required total stillness, intense focus, and an almost meditative control over the body's urge to breathe. It wasn't just breath holding, it was a deep dive into human potential. Parachuting into a soccer stadium. In 2014, stuntman Mario Fuchs stunned fans by skydiving into the Allianz Arena in Munich, landing on the field moments before kickoff. Jumping from a helicopter high above the stadium, Fuchs navigated swirling wind currents and a tight landing zone surrounded by 70,000 spectators. With perfect precision, he touched down at midfield, delivering the match ball like a human missile. It wasn't just a stunt, it was sports delivery. Extreme edition. The climber who hung from a flying helicopter. In 2018, Swiss alpinist Nicolas Hojak took extreme to new heights by hanging from a helicopter's landing skid with one hand, no harness, and thousands of feet of air below. Part of a high-altitude stunt over the Swiss Alps, Hojak gripped the skid as the chopper banked and spun, with only raw strength and mental steel keeping him in the sky. The entire sequence lasted just seconds, but felt like forever. It wasn't just climbing, it was flight by fingertips. The snowboarder who rode an active volcano. In 2016, pro snowboarder Mitch Telderer descended Volcan Villarrica in Chile while it was actively erupting. With ash billowing behind him and lava glowing at the crater, Telderer carved down its steep, unstable slopes covered in a thin layer of snow. The terrain was unpredictable, the air toxic, and the margin for error razor thin, but the footage was unforgettable. It wasn't just snowboarding, it was surfing fire on a frozen wave. The ice swimmer who dove below the Arctic. In 2021, Finnish swimmer Johanna Nordblad set a world record by swimming 103 meters, 338 feet, under ice in a frozen lake wearing no wetsuit. With only a swimsuit, goggles, and a single breath, she glided beneath a solid sheet of ice and water just above freezing. Visibility was near zero, and she had to navigate by counting strokes to find the exit hole. One mistake and she wouldn't surface. It wasn't just cold, it was ice-blooded endurance at its peak. Jumping a dirt bike onto a moving train. In 2017, Australian stunt rider Robbie Madison pulled off a cinematic stunt for the ages. He jumped a dirt bike onto a moving train, then jumped off it again, all at full speed. Timing was everything. He launched off a dirt ramp, landed perfectly on a train car, barreling down the tracks, rode a few cars' length, then launched again off a second ramp onto solid ground. It wasn't just a jump, it was a two-part masterpiece of mayhem. Running across an entire frozen lake. In 2019, endurance runner Michael Wardian completed a 135-mile ultramarathon across Lake Kovsgol in Mongolia, completely frozen over. With wind chill temperatures plunging below minus 40 degrees Fahrenheit, he ran for over 2 days straight, battling frostbite, blisters, and hallucinations from sleep deprivation. The ice cracked beneath him at times, and snowstorms rolled in without warning. It wasn't just a run, it was an Arctic odyssey on foot. The high dive from a helicopter. In 2015, Colombian cliff diver Orlando Duque made history again by leaping from a helicopter at 75 feet into a narrow inlet in Chile's Pacific waters. Hovering high above the rugged coastline, Duque timed the jump perfectly, launching himself in a clean vertical dive into a tight splash zone surrounded by rocks. One misjudged gust of wind or tilt of the chopper, and the stunt could have ended in disaster. It wasn't just high diving, it was aerial artistry in motion. The urban climber who hung by one hand. In 2017, Russian daredevil Vitaly Raskolov scaled the Shenzhen Center, one of China's tallest skyscrapers, and hung by one hand from its spire over 1,700 feet above the ground. With no ropes, harness, or safety net, he climbed the building illegally, then casually dangled over the city, capturing the moment with a selfie stick. The video went viral, and so did viewers' heart rates. It wasn't just urban exploration, it was gravity-defying madness. Sandboarding down a live volcano. In Nicaragua, thrill seekers flock to Cerro Negro, one of the world's most active volcanoes, to try an insane sport, volcano boarding. Riders hike up the black, ash-covered slope, then launch themselves downhill on reinforced boards, reaching speeds of up to 55 miles per hour, all while dodging sharp volcanic rocks and clouds of sulfur gas. One wrong lean, and it's a face-first slide into lava gravel. It's not just boarding, it's surfing the Earth's fire. The windsurfer who crossed the Atlantic. In 2013, French adventurer Rafael Damian became the first person to windsurf across the Atlantic Ocean using only solar power, and he did it solo. Starting from Las Palmas in the Canary Islands, he crossed over 3,000 miles of open ocean aboard a custom solar-powered trimaran using a windsurf sail to harness both wind and sun. Battling storms, equipment failures, and total isolation, he reached Guadeloupe after weeks at sea. It wasn't just windsurfing, it was a renewable-powered odyssey. The skier who backflipped off a cliff. In 2010, Swedish freestyle skier Jan Olsson stunned the skiing world by landing a perfect backflip off a 100-foot cliff in the Alps, wearing a full camera rig. He approached the drop at high speed, launched into the flip with flawless form, and touched down in deep powder like it was just another trick in the park. The stunt blended big mountain danger with freestyle flair, and the footage went viral. It wasn't just a flip, it was high-altitude artistry in motion. The man who ran a marathon backward. In 2004, German athlete Marcus Jürgens completed an entire marathon running backward and later broke the world record by finishing 1 in 3 hours and 38 minutes. Jürgens trained his body and brain to run in reverse, mastering balance, pacing, and terrain awareness without the ability to see where he was going. Spectators were stunned as he crossed the finish line facing the wrong way, but leading the pack. It wasn't just running, it was flipping the sport on its head. Riding a zip line at 100 miles per hour. In 2018, thrill seekers lined up for Velocity 2 in Wales, the fastest zip line in the world, where riders soar at over 100 miles per hour across a vast quarry. Suspended in a superhero-style harness, riders launch from a mountaintop platform and fly 1.5 kilometers over cliffs, lakes, and rocky terrain, just feet above the ground at times. The experience is so fast, goggles are required, not for style, but survival. It's not just a zip line, it's a flight without wings. The cyclist who rode the death road. In Bolivia, adrenaline junkies travel from around the world to bike down Yungas Road, infamously known as Death Road. Stretching 40 miles through the Andes, it features 3,600-foot drop-offs, no guardrails, and blind corners slicked with mist. Despite the danger, riders descend this narrow dirt track at high speeds, balancing thrill with sheer terror. It's not just mountain biking, it's a ride along the edge of oblivion. The first skydive without a parachute. In 2016, stuntman Luke Aikens made history by becoming the first person to skydive from 25,000 feet with no parachute and survive. Wearing only a tracking suit, Aikens plummeted at terminal velocity and landed in a 100 by 100-foot net suspended 20 stories high. The margin for error was microscopic. He had to hit the center perfectly or miss the net entirely. It wasn't just a skydive, it was a calculated plunge into legend. The climber who slept on a cliff. Extreme climbers like Emily Harrington and Tommy Caldwell have taken multi-day climbs to new extremes by sleeping in portal edges, tiny tents hanging thousands of feet above the ground. These suspended shelters cling to sheer rock faces like hammocks bolted to the sky. Climbers eat, rest, and sleep with nothing but thin fabric between them and a vertical drop, often in wild weather and total darkness. It's not just camping, it's cliffside survival in midair. Running a marathon in the North Pole. Yes, it's real. The North Pole Marathon challenges runners to complete 26.2 miles on floating ice in temperatures below -30 degrees Fahrenheit, with armed guards nearby to protect against polar bears. Athletes wear layers of insulated gear, run through snowdrifts and slush, and often battle fierce winds that feel like knives. Footing is unpredictable, the course shifts with the ice, and even GPS struggles to work that far north. It's not just extreme, it's frostbitten endurance at the top of the world. The longest free solo slackline walk. In 2016, German slackliner Alexander Schultz walked a 2,460-foot slackline without any safety tether, hundreds of feet above a canyon in China. With only his balance and mental focus to rely on, Schultz tiptoed across the narrow webbing for nearly an hour, exposed to wind, nerves, and the sheer drop to below. One misstep would have meant instant freefall. It wasn't just walking a line, it was defying death with every step. Snowmobiling across the Arctic Ocean. In 2015, Norwegian adventurer Børge Ousland crossed parts of the frozen Arctic Ocean on a snowmobile, braving shifting ice sheets, crevasses, and open water leads. The journey spanned hundreds of miles over unstable, drifting terrain where a wrong turn could plunge rider and machine into freezing depths. With temperatures dipping below -50 degrees Fahrenheit, Ousland relied on satellite navigation and survival instincts to make it through. It wasn't just a ride, it was mechanized madness on the edge of the world. Base jumping into an underground cave. In 2012, wingsuit pilot Cedric Dumont leapt into Mexico's Cave of Swallows, a giant vertical shaft so deep it could swallow the Statue of Liberty. He launched from the jungle-covered rim and plummeted into the darkness, free-falling over 1,200 feet before deploying his parachute just above the cave floor. The descent lasted seconds, but the visual of a human diving into the Earth's core was unforgettable. It wasn't just base jumping, it was a plunge into the planet. Riding a mountain bike across a crane. In 2020, Scottish trials rider Danny McCaskill took balance to a new level by riding his mountain bike across a construction crane, hundreds of feet above the ground. The beam was barely wider than his tires, swaying slightly in the wind, with a jaw-dropping drop on either side. With surgical precision, McCaskill pedaled across the steel arm, even pausing mid-line to pop a wheelie. It wasn't just biking, it was tightrope artistry on two wheels. The longest swim in a river. In 2007, Slovenian swimmer Martin Strel completed a mind-blowing feat. He swam the entire length of the Amazon River, 3,273 miles, in just 66 days. He faced piranhas, crocodiles, parasites, and river-borne infections, swimming up to 10 hours a day in dangerous, murky waters. At times delirious from heat and exhaustion, he kept going with one goal: to raise awareness for clean water access. It wasn't just a swim, it was a battle against nature's wildest current. The skater who did a loop on a sky bridge. In 2015, pro skater Tony Hawk stunned the world once again by completing a full vertical loop on a custom-built sky bridge, hundreds of feet in the air, with only a guardrail and guts. The loop was narrow, fast, and perched on an open-air platform with dizzying views below. One slip meant falling, not just off the board, but potentially off the edge. Hawk nailed it with his signature cool, adding one more first to his legendary resume. It wasn't just a trick, it was history, carved in concrete and courage. Surfing a wave for over 3 minutes. In 2011, surfer Gary Saavedra rode a man-made river wave in Panama for an astonishing 3 minutes and 55 seconds, covering over 2 miles, setting a Guinness World Record for the longest time in distance surfed. The wave was created by a speedboat on the Gatun Lake section of the Panama Canal. Saavedra balanced, adjusted, and carved non-stop, fighting leg burn and wave fatigue for nearly 4 straight minutes. It wasn't ocean surfing. It was endurance surfing at its finest. The wingsuit pilot who flew through a ring. In 2016, Italian wingsuit flyer Uli Emanuele stunned the world by flying through a tiny rock arch just over 6 feet wide at over 100 miles per hour. Wearing a wingsuit and a helmet cam, he launched from a mountain, navigated a narrow flight path through the Alps, and threaded himself through the hole in the rock with only inches to spare on either side. It wasn't just precision, it was aerial surgery at terminal velocity. Ice climbing a melting glacier arch. In 2019, climber Will Gadd returned to the Athabasca Glacier in Canada to scale a massive ice arch, knowing it was rapidly melting beneath him. The arch was delicate, unstable, and unpredictable. Every axe swing had to be perfect, as chunks of ice were constantly falling around him. Scientists warned the formation wouldn't last much longer, and days later, it collapsed. It wasn't just a climb, it was a farewell ascent to a vanishing world. The ultra race through a jungle. The Jungle Ultra in Peru is one of the world's most brutal foot races, a 143-mile run through the Amazon rainforest, complete with mud, heat, and wildlife. Runners carry all their own gear and race across rivers, up slippery hills, and through dense vegetation in 100% humidity, all while avoiding snakes, spiders, and exhaustion. Finishers call it a battle of mind over mud. It's not just a run, it's survival disguised as a race. The skydive with a stunt plane loop. In 2014, daredevil Wojtek Czyz pulled off a jaw-dropping feat. He jumped from a stunt plane mid-loop, free-falling as the aircraft inverted above him. The plane performed a vertical loop, and Czyz timed his jump to coincide with the top of the arc, creating the illusion that he was outrunning the aircraft midair. The precision needed was unreal, with pilot and jumper perfectly in sync. It wasn't just a jump, it was sky choreography at its wildest. Climbing a dam with bare hands. In 2011, Czech climber Adam Ondra scaled the 418-foot Verzaska Dam in Switzerland, using no ropes, no safety gear, and no climbing shoes. The dam's concrete surface offered barely any grip, but Ondra relied on tiny imperfections, raw finger strength, and flawless technique to ascend what looked like a vertical wall of smooth stone. It wasn't a mountain. It was man versus gravity on a man-made monolith. Riding a jet ski across the Atlantic. In 2006, Spanish adventurer Alvaro de Marichalar completed a transatlantic crossing on a jet ski, traveling 10,000 miles over open ocean alone. He rode a tiny 9-foot watercraft through storms, high waves, and scorching sun, stopping only to refuel from a support boat and sleeping on the jet ski itself. The journey took more than 3 months, testing his endurance and willpower every mile. It wasn't just a ride, it was a solo surf across the sea. The skier who jumped over a road. In 2016, French freestyle skier Candide Thovex wowed the internet by jumping a busy mountain road without snow. In a viral video, Thovex carved through grassy slopes, forests, and dirt paths, then launched off a natural bump and cleared an entire 2-lane road, just as a car passed underneath. His skis never touched snow once, yet he made it look effortless. It wasn't just skiing, it was redefining what skis were meant for. Paddleboarding around an entire country. In 2018, British adventurer Brendan Prince set out to circumnavigate mainland Britain on a stand-up paddleboard and succeeded, becoming the first person to do so. He paddled over 2,500 miles through rough seas, unpredictable tides, and stormy weather, all while standing upright. The journey took 141 days, tested every muscle in his body, and raised awareness for water safety and mental health. It wasn't just paddleboarding, it was coastal conquest by core strength. The longest highline over active traffic. In 2015, French highliner Nathan Paulin walked a 1,000-foot slackline stretched over the busy Aiguille du Midi cable car route in the French Alps, with gondolas zipping beneath him, balancing thousands of feet above the valley floor. Paulin calmly crossed the line while tourists watched in awe from inside the moving cars. The wind was unpredictable, the exposure dizzying, and yet he made it look serene. It wasn't just balance, it was ballet above a highway in the sky. Cliff diving from a hot air balloon. In 2018, Austrian diver Lasso Schaller took cliff diving to new heights, literally by jumping from a hot air balloon into a lake from over 190 feet in the air. With no platform and nothing solid beneath him, Schaller launched into a full dive mid-flight, free-falling for nearly 3 seconds before hitting the water with perfect form. It was one of the highest controlled dives ever attempted. It wasn't just diving, it was a leap from the clouds. The ultra cyclist who rode around the world. In 2017, Scottish cyclist Mark Beaumont shattered records by cycling around the world in just 78 days, averaging 240 miles per day. He crossed continents, battled wild weather, dodged traffic in remote regions, and kept a schedule so intense he barely slept. From the deserts of Australia to the mountains of Europe, he pedaled through pain, exhaustion, and jet lag to circle the planet. It wasn't just a ride, it was global domination on 2 wheels. Climbing an iceberg with ice axes only. In 2015, American climber Clemen Priamarel completed a first-of-its-kind ascent, scaling a floating iceberg in the Arctic Ocean using only ice axes and crampons. The berg shifted constantly with the waves, making it feel like climbing a moving mountain. Every swing had to be fast and accurate, or the fragile ice could shear away. And if he fell, it was straight into freezing water. It wasn't just ice climbing, it was vertical chaos on a drifting sculpture. Kayaking off a snow-covered cliff. In 2013, pro kayaker Aniel Sarasolses pulled off a wild stunt by launching his kayak off a snowy mountain cliff, landing directly into a river below. Wearing ski gear and gripping his paddle, he rocketed down a snowy slope, hit the edge at full speed, and dropped dozens of feet into icy, rushing water, seamlessly transitioning from snow to whitewater in seconds. It wasn't just a drop, it was a winter-to-water thrill ride. The base jump off a moving truck. In 2015, wingsuit flyer Miles Dacier pulled off a stunt straight out of an action film. He base jumped off a moving semi-truck driving across a bridge. As the truck sped along at over 50 miles per hour, Dacier climbed to the roof, waited for the perfect moment, and launched into the air, soaring off the bridge and into the canyon below before deploying his parachute. It wasn't just timing, it was precision at highway speed. The deepest scuba dive ever recorded. In 2014, Egyptian diver Ahmed Gabr set the world record for the deepest scuba dive, plunging to an astonishing 1,090 feet, deeper than the Eiffel Tower is tall. The descent took just 12 minutes, but the return to the surface required over 15 hours due to carefully planned decompression stops to avoid deadly nitrogen buildup. He trained for years, knowing that even a small mistake at that depth could be fatal. It wasn't just a dive, it was a journey to the ocean's edge. Riding a unicycle across a canyon. In 2019, extreme unicyclist Lutz Eichholz took balance to the limit by riding a unicycle across a narrow canyon ridge with sheer drops on both sides. The path was barely wider than his tire, the wind unpredictable, and there was no safety net, just laser focus and leg control, one twitch in either direction, and it would have been a fall into hundreds of feet of open air. It wasn't just balance, it was bravery on one wheel. The longest swim in Antarctica. In 2020, British endurance swimmer Lewis Pugh became the first person to swim a full kilometer in the Antarctic Ocean wearing only a Speedo cap and goggles. He plunged into the 28.8 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 1.8 degrees Celsius water near melting glaciers to highlight the climate crisis, braving icebergs, freezing currents, and the threat of cold shock with no thermal protection. The swim took just under 20 minutes, but pushed human limits to the brink. It wasn't just cold, it was courage in its rawest form. The skater who landed the first 1,080. In 2012, at just 12 years old, Tom Schaar made skateboarding history by landing the world's first 1,080, 3 full spins in the air, on a mega ramp in California. No one had ever landed the trick before, not even the pros. Schaar built up massive speed, launched into the sky, spun 3 times with flawless form, and stomped to the landing like a seasoned veteran. It wasn't just a trick, it was a turning point in skateboarding evolution. The ultimate triathlon across continents. In 2021, French adventurer Guillaume Néry completed a one-of-a-kind triathlon, swimming, biking, and running across 3 continents in a single day. He began with an ocean swim in Asia, cycled across a rugged Middle Eastern desert, then sprinted across Europe's border to finish, all within 24 hours. Each leg was extreme on its own, but together, a global endurance masterpiece. It wasn't just a triathlon, it was a border-breaking feat of human will. Conclusion. Congratulations, you've just powered through 100 mind-blowing extreme sports facts, a whirlwind tour through some of the boldest, wildest, and most death-defying feats ever attempted by humans. From mid-air flips to freezing swims, sky-high stunts to ultra-endurance challenges, you've heard just how far the human spirit can go when fear takes a back seat to passion. But here's the thing about extreme sports. They're constantly evolving. New records are set, new limits are tested, and new adventurers are always pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. For every story in this audiobook, there are hundreds more out there just waiting to unfold on mountaintops, in oceans, across deserts, and even in the sky. Maybe this collection sparked a bit of awe. Maybe it stirred your curiosity about a sport you'd never heard of. Or maybe it just gave you a new appreciation for what people can do when they mix skill, courage, and just a touch of madness. One thing's for sure, the world of extreme sports never stands still. So as this audiobook comes to a close, don't think of it as the end. Think of it as the launch pad for your next adrenaline-fueled rabbit hole. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and remember, the most mind-blowing feats are the ones no one's dared to try yet. Acknowledgements. Creating 100 mind-blowing extreme sports facts has been an exhilarating ride, full of late nights, wild research rabbit holes, and more "wait, they did what?" moments than I can count. While my name might be on the cover, this audiobook wouldn't exist without the incredible people who helped bring it to life. First, a massive thank you to the fearless athletes, filmmakers, and storytellers who capture and share these jaw-dropping feats. Your courage, creativity, and commitment to the edge of possibility are what inspired every single story. This project is a tribute to your relentless pursuit of the extraordinary. To my family and friends, you've cheered me on through every twist, turn, and high-speed sprint toward the finish line. Thanks for letting me talk endlessly about volcano dives, ice swims, and canyon flips over dinner. Your support means everything. To my listeners, thank you for being bold enough to join me on this wild journey. Whether you're here for the adrenaline rush, the unbelievable facts, or just a break from the ordinary, this audiobook was made for you. Your curiosity fuels the next chapter. And finally, to the world of extreme sports itself, thank you for being so endlessly daring. You've given us more than just stunts and records. You've given us a reminder that limits are meant to be pushed. Here's to the fearless, the dreamers, and the ones who never say, "That's impossible." About the author. I'm Felix Grayson, a storyteller at heart and someone who's endlessly fascinated by the strange, surprising, and downright unbelievable moments that push human limits. With a deep love for uncovering the wildest feats from the world of extreme sports, I created 100 mind-blowing extreme sports facts to entertain, inspire, and maybe even make you say, "Wait, they actually did that?" When I'm not chasing down stories about high-altitude stunts, underwater adventures, or gravity-defying tricks, you'll probably find me exploring remote corners of the world, preferably somewhere with a decent Wi-Fi connection, binge-watching adventure documentaries, or pondering life's most fascinating questions over a strong cup of coffee and the sound of GoPro footage playing in the background. I believe in fearless storytelling and the thrill of the unknown, and I hope this journey through the edge of what's possible left your jaw on the floor at least once. Thanks for listening.